You know that moment when someone treats you like you don't belong, only to realize they just made the biggest mistake of their life? Well, Bruce Lee experienced exactly that. And trust me, what happened next will blow your mind. It was 1972. Bruce had just wrapped up filming Enter the Dragon in Hong Kong, the movie that would later become legendary. He was exhausted, running on maybe 3 hours of sleep, wearing simple jeans and a plain black shirt. Nothing fancy, no designer labels, just Bruce being Bruce. He grabbed his small leather bag and headed to the private aviation terminal, the one where only the elite flew from. As he walked through those glass doors, the cool air conditioning hit his face. The terminal was all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Everything screamed money and power. Bruce looked around, taking it all in. His flight to Los Angeles was scheduled to leave in 30 minutes. He walked toward the main desk where a woman in a crisp uniform sat typing away at her computer. But before he could reach her, someone stepped right in front of him. "Excuse me, sir." The voice was sharp, condescending. Bruce looked up to see a tall man in an expensive suit. His name tag read, Richard Morrison, terminal manager. The guy had this look on his face, you know the type. The look that said he thought he was better than everyone else. Bruce stopped walking. "Yes?" Morrison looked him up and down, his eyes lingering on Bruce's casual clothes, his worn sneakers, the simple bag over his shoulder. "The driver's waiting area is over there." He pointed toward a small section near the entrance. A few men in chauffeur uniforms sat there reading newspapers. Bruce didn't react immediately. He just stood there, letting the words sink in. Did this guy really just assume he was a driver? The woman at the desk looked up, her eyes widening slightly. She seemed to recognize Bruce, but Morrison was too busy being impressed with himself to notice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Bruce said calmly. His voice was steady, controlled, the same way he controlled every movement in his martial arts. No wasted energy, no unnecessary emotion. Morrison crossed his arms. "Look, I don't know whose driver you are, but this terminal is for passengers only. Private jet passengers. You can't just wander around here. Now please, go wait where you're supposed to wait. Have you ever been judged just by the way you look?" Now here's something interesting about human psychology. There's a cognitive bias called thin slicing, where our brains make snap judgments about people within the first 7 seconds of meeting them. We assess someone's status, trustworthiness, and even competence based purely on appearance. It's a survival mechanism from our ancestors, but in modern society, it causes exactly what was happening to Bruce right now. The woman at the desk stood up. "Mr. Morrison, I think." "Not now, Patricia." Morrison cut her off without even looking at her. His eyes were still fixed on Bruce, that same arrogant expression plastered across his face. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave this area immediately. If you don't comply, I'll have security escort you out." Bruce took a slow breath. He could feel that familiar energy building inside him. The same energy he channeled into every punch, every kick, but he kept it contained. "I'm not a driver," he said simply. "I'm a passenger. I'm here to board my flight." Morrison actually laughed, out loud, like Bruce had just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Your flight? Sir, do you have any idea how much a private jet costs? The people who fly from this terminal are CEOs, celebrities, millionaires. Not." He gestured vaguely at Bruce's outfit. "Whatever this is." Patricia, the woman at the desk, was frantically typing something now. She kept glancing between Bruce and Morrison, her face getting redder by the second. Bruce noticed. He also noticed 2 pilots walking through the terminal and how they both did a double take when they saw him. "I'd like to see your credentials," Morrison continued, holding out his hand expectantly. "Boarding pass, identification, proof of ticket purchase. Because honestly, I think you walked into the wrong building entirely." Bruce reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately. He pulled out his passport first. The dark blue American passport with gold lettering. He held it up so Morrison could see the name. Bruce Lee. It read clearly. Morrison squinted at it. Bruce could see the moment of recognition starting to dawn on his face, but the man was too proud to back down now. He'd committed to this course of action, and his ego wouldn't let him reverse. "I don't care what your name is. I need proof that you're supposed to be here." What would you do in Bruce's position right now? And this is where Bruce demonstrated something powerful. In psychology, it's called emotional regulation. The ability to control your emotional response in stressful situations. Bruce had mastered this through years of martial arts training. You see, martial arts isn't just about physical combat. It's about mental discipline. Bruce often said, "A quick temper will make a fool of you soon enough." He practiced what he preached. Bruce smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how this was about to play out. "Patricia," he called over to the desk. "Could you pull up the passenger manifest for the aircraft parked at Gate 3? Patricia jumped at the sound of her name.
"Yes, Mr. Lee."
"Right away, Mr. Lee." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Morrison's confident expression started to crack just a little bit, just enough for Bruce to notice. "Mr. Morrison," Patricia's voice came out slightly shaky. "Gate 3 is, it's what?" Morrison snapped, his patience clearly running thin. "It's Mr. Lee's private jet, sir." The words came out in a rush. "He owns it. He's not just a passenger. He's the only passenger. Because it's his plane." The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of a jet engine outside, someone's footsteps echoing across the marble floor. But nobody spoke. Morrison's face went through about 5 different colors in 3 seconds. Red, then white, then red again. Bruce didn't gloat, didn't rub it in. He just stood there, that same calm expression on his face, waiting. Morrison stammered. You weren't wearing a suit." Bruce finished for him. "No, I wasn't. I just finished filming for 18 hours straight. I'm tired. I want to go home to my family. And I prefer to fly comfortably. Is that going to be a problem?" Morrison looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. "Mr. Lee, I am so incredibly sorry. I had no idea. I should have. I didn't recognize how your films are. I'm such a big fan." The more he talked, the worse it got. Bruce held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "You didn't apologize because you didn't recognize me. You should apologize because you judged someone based on their appearance. What if I really was a driver? Would that make me less deserving of respect?" That hit different, didn't it? Here's a fascinating fact about respect and human behavior. Studies show that people who treat others based on their perceived status rather than inherent dignity actually suffer from lower emotional intelligence. Bruce understood something most people don't respect shouldn't be conditional. In his philosophy, which he called Jeet Kune Dus, the way of the intercepting fist, he believed in having no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. This meant treating every person as an individual without preconceived notions or biases. Morrison opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer for that. Patricia was watching the whole exchange with wide eyes, probably grateful she wasn't the one who'd messed up. Bruce picked up his bag. "I'm going to board my plane now." "Patricia, thank you for your help." He started walking toward Gate 3, then paused and turned back. "Mr. Morrison, let me tell you something. In martial arts we have a saying. Don't judge a man by his appearance, because the quietest person in the room might be the most dangerous. The simplest, dressed person might be the wealthiest, and the man you dismiss as a driver might own the jet." He let those words hang in the air for a moment, then continued walking. Morrison stood there frozen, watching him go. Other people in the terminal had stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Some of them recognized Bruce and were already whispering to each other. As Bruce reached the gate, he heard rapid footsteps behind him. Morrison was hurrying to catch up, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble. "Mr. Lee, please. Allow me to personally escort you to your aircraft. It's the least I can do. And again, I cannot express how sorry I am." Bruce stopped at the door leading to the tarmac. Through the glass, his beautiful Learjet sat waiting, its white body gleaming in the afternoon sun. The crew was already preparing for departure. "You know what the real problem is," Bruce said, not looking at Morrison. "It's not that you made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. It's that you were so confident in your judgment. You saw someone dressed simply and immediately decided they didn't belong. You didn't ask questions. You didn't verify. You just assumed." Morrison nodded, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. "You're absolutely right. I was completely out of line. It won't happen again." "Make sure it doesn't," Bruce said. "Not just with me. With anyone. That driver you tried to send me to sit with, he deserves respect too. Everyone does." He pushed open the door, warm air rushing in from outside. But Morrison wasn't done. "Mr. Lee, is there anything I can do to make this right? Anything at all?" Bruce thought about it for a second. Then he smiled, a real smile this time. "Yeah. Next time someone walks in here dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, treat them exactly the same way you'd treat someone in a 3-piece suit." Can you do that? Would you have been as gracious as Bruce in this moment? What Bruce was practicing here is something psychologists call transformative communication. Instead of humiliating Morrison, he was trying to create a teaching moment. Research shows that people are far more likely to change their behavior when they're educated rather than shamed. Bruce knew that embarrassing Morrison publicly would only create resentment. but helping him understand the deeper issue. That could create lasting change. Morrison nodded vigorously. Absolutely. You have my word. Bruce walked out onto the tarmac. The heat hit him immediately after the cool terminal, but it felt good. Real. The stairs to his jet were already down, and his pilot, Captain Anderson, was standing at the bottom waiting for him. Mr. Lee. Anderson greeted him with a genuine smile. Ready for takeoff. More than ready, Captain. Bruce climbed the stairs, each step taking him further away from the awkward encounter. At the top, he turned and looked back at the terminal. Morrison was still visible through the glass door, standing there watching. Bruce gave him a small nod. The man nodded back, a gesture of acknowledgement and apology. Inside the jet, everything was exactly as Bruce had designed it, simple but elegant. Leather seats, dark wood paneling, but nothing ostentatious. Nothing that screamed, "Look how rich I am." Because that wasn't who Bruce was. He sat down in his favorite seat, the one by the window where he could see the wing. Captain Anderson's voice came through the intercom. "We'll be taking off in about 5 minutes, Mr. Lee. Weather looks perfect for our flight to Los Angeles." Bruce leaned back and closed his eyes. The encounter with Morrison kept playing in his mind. He wasn't angry about it. Not really. He was more disappointed. Disappointed that people still judged books by their covers. That someone's worth was measured by their clothes, their appearance, their perceived social status. His mind drifted to a conversation he'd had with his teacher, Ip Man, years ago in Hong Kong. The old master had told him something he never forgot. A true warrior never needs to prove themselves. Their actions speak louder than their appearance. Let others make assumptions. Let them underestimate you. It only makes your eventual victory more meaningful. At the time, Bruce had thought Ip Man was talking about fighting, about combat, but now he understood it was about life, about navigating a world that constantly tried to put you in a box based on superficial judgments. The engines roared to life. That familiar rumble that Bruce had grown to love. The jet started moving, slowly at first, then picking up speed as it taxied toward the runway. Through the window, Bruce could see other aircraft, ground crew working, the controlled chaos of an airport in operation. Then something caught his eye. Near the terminal building, Morrison had stepped outside. He was standing there on the observation area, watching Bruce's jet prepare for takeoff. Even from this distance, Bruce could see the man's posture. Shoulders slumped, head down. The body language of someone who knew they'd messed up badly. Did Morrison learn his lesson, or will he forget it next week? There's actually a psychological phenomenon called the peak end rule. People judge an experience based on how they felt at its most intense point and at its end. Morrison's most intense moment was realizing his mistake, and the end was Bruce's kindness and wisdom. Research suggests that this combination creates the strongest memory retention and behavioral change. Bruce had just given Morrison an experience he'd never forget, not through anger, but through grace. The jet turned onto the runway. Captain Anderson's voice came through again. "We're cleared for takeoff, Mr. Lee. Next stop, Los Angeles. Let's go home." "Captain." The engines reached full power. Bruce felt himself pressed back into the seat as the jet accelerated down the runway. Faster and faster. The ground blurred past the window. And then that magical moment when the wheels left the earth and they were airborne. Hong Kong fell away below them, the terminal getting smaller and smaller until it was just another tiny building in a massive city. Bruce thought about what he'd said to Morrison. About judging people by their appearance. It was something he dealt with constantly in Hollywood. Producers who saw an Asian man and immediately thought, villain, or psychic. Directors who couldn't imagine him as a leading man. Studios that wanted to dub over his voice because they thought American audiences wouldn't accept his accent. He'd fought against those assumptions every single day, and he'd won. Enter the Dragon was going to prove that. He knew it in his bones. The movie was going to break barriers, shatter stereotypes, change the game completely. The jet leveled off at cruising altitude. Bruce unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, stretching his legs. He walked to the small kitchen area and poured himself a glass of water. Out the window, clouds drifted past like cotton balls. His phone rang. The onboard phone, not many people had this number. He picked it up. "Hello, Bruce! It's Linda!" His wife's voice came through clear despite the distance. "Are you in the air already?" "Just took off a few minutes ago. I'll be home in about 13 hours. The kids are so excited to see you. Shannon keeps asking when Daddy's plane will land." Bruce smiled at the mention of his daughter. "Tell her soon. Tell her Daddy can't wait to see her either." How was the terminal? Any issues with the flight? Bruce chuckled. "You could say that. I'll tell you all about it when I get home. Let's just say someone learned an important lesson today about judging books by their covers. Oh no. What happened? Nothing I couldn't handle. But it reminded me why I do what I do, why representation matters, why we can't let people put us in boxes based on their preconceptions. They talked for a few more minutes before Linda had to go. After hanging up, Bruce returned to his seat. He pulled out a notebook from his bag, one of many he kept for writing down thoughts, ideas, philosophical musings. He started writing about the encounter with Morrison. Today a man saw my clothes and decided I was a driver. He couldn't imagine that someone dressed simply could own a private jet. This is the problem with the world. We create hierarchies based on appearances. We assign value based on external factors. But true worth comes from within. True power comes from discipline, from dedication, from the strength of character, not from the price tag on your shirt. He wrote for almost an hour, the words flowing easily. By the time he stopped, he'd filled several pages with thoughts about identity, perception, and the responsibility that came with breaking barriers. What assumptions have you made about people that turned out to be completely wrong? This connects to a concept called confirmation bias. Once we form an initial impression, we tend to look for information that confirms it and ignore information that contradicts it. Morrison had formed an impression based on Bruce's clothes and built an entire narrative around it. Bruce's calm response forced Morrison to confront his bias directly. In cognitive behavioral therapy, this is called cognitive restructuring, challenging and changing unhelpful thought patterns. The flight continued smoothly. Bruce watched a movie, ate a simple meal prepared by the onboard staff, did some stretches in the aisle to keep his body loose. 13 hours was a long time to sit, even in a private jet. As they approached Los Angeles, Captain Anderson came through the cabin to chat. Mr. Lee, we'll be landing in about 40 minutes. I heard there was some commotion at the terminal in Hong Kong before we left. Bruce raised an eyebrow. News travels fast. Patricia, the woman at the desk, she's friends with my wife. She called her, told her the whole story. About how Morrison tried to kick you out. About how you handled it with such grace. My wife thinks you're a saint for not tearing that guy apart. Bruce laughed. What would that have accomplished? Making him feel worse. Proving I could destroy him verbally. No, I'd rather he learn something. Hopefully he'll think twice before judging someone next time. You're a better man than me, Mr. Lee. I would have lost my temper. Ager is easy, Bruce said. Patience is the real challenge. Besides, the man was already embarrassed enough. Why pile on? Captain Anderson nodded thoughtfully, then returned to the cockpit. Bruce looked out the window as Los Angeles came into view. The sprawling city, the mountains in the distance, the ocean sparkling in the late afternoon sun. Home. After weeks of intense filming, difficult choreography, long nights and early mornings, he was finally home. The jet descended smoothly. The landing was perfect, barely a bump as the wheels touched down. They taxied to the private terminal, much smaller than the one in Hong Kong but just as exclusive. As Bruce stepped off the plane, Linda was waiting for him, Shannon and Brandon beside her. His kids ran toward him, shouting, "Daddy!" He dropped his bag and scooped them both up, one in each arm. I missed you guys so much, he said, hugging them tight. Linda walked over, smiling. Welcome home. Now tell me what happened in Hong Kong. As they walked to the car, Bruce told her the whole story. About Morrison, about the assumption, about how he'd handled it. Linda listened quietly, her hand in his. When he finished, she squeezed his hand. You know what I love about you? You could have destroyed that man. Made him feel 2 inches tall, called over reporters, made it a big story about discrimination and prejudice. But you didn't. You taught him a lesson with kindness. That's who you are. Bruce shrugged. Maybe he'll remember it. Maybe he won't. But at least I gave him a chance to be better. They drove home through Los Angeles traffic, Shannon chattering about school, Brandon showing off a new toy. Bruce listened to their voices, feeling the tension of the past weeks melting away. This was what mattered. Not the jets, not the fame, not proving himself to people like Morrison. This. Family love. Being present. That night, after the kids were in bed, Bruce sat on his back porch looking at the stars. Linda joined him, 2 cups of tea in her hands. She gave him one and sat down beside him. Do you think he really learned anything? She asked. That Morrison guy? Bruce took a sip of tea. I hope so. But even if he didn't, maybe someone else who heard the story will. Maybe one person will think twice before judging someone. That's all we can do, right? Plant seeds and hope some of them grow. What seed will you plant tomorrow to make the world a little better? This philosophy aligns with what researchers call the ripple effect. In social psychology, One act of kindness or one powerful lesson can spread through a community, influencing dozens or even hundreds of people over time. Bruce wasn't just teaching Morrison, he was potentially influencing everyone Morrison would interact with afterward. Studies show that when someone experiences or witnesses an act of moral beauty, they're more likely to pay it forward. They sat in comfortable silence, the Los Angeles night alive with distant sounds of traffic, crickets, the rustle of palm trees in the breeze. Bruce thought about his journey. From Hong Kong to America, from unknown actor to rising star, from fighting against stereotypes to breaking them down completely. The encounter with Morrison was just one moment in a lifetime of moments where he'd had to prove himself. But maybe, just maybe, he was creating a path for others to follow. A path where Asian actors wouldn't have to fight so hard to be seen. Where people wouldn't be judged by their appearance but by their character. You know what the funny part is? Bruce said suddenly. What? Morrison probably tells that story now. Probably tells everyone about the time he mistook Bruce Lee for a driver. And maybe every time he tells it, he remembers the lesson. Maybe that's the real victory. Not that I owned the jet, but that I changed his perspective. Elinda smiled. That's very philosophical of you. That's what 13 hours on a plane will do to you. Lots of time to think. They finished their tea and went inside. Bruce checked on the kids one more time, watching them sleep peacefully. Shannon clutching her favorite stuffed animal. Brandon sprawled across his bed like a starfish. These were the moments that made everything worth it. In his office, Bruce looked at the photos on the wall. Pictures from his movies, from martial arts demonstrations, from family gatherings. Each one represented a piece of his journey. And tomorrow, he'd add another piece. Another day of breaking barriers, challenging assumptions, proving that you didn't need to look a certain way or dress a certain way to be powerful, to be successful, to matter. The encounter with Morrison would become one of many stories people told about Bruce Lee. Some true, some exaggerated, some completely made up. But this one was real. And the lesson it contained was real too. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't assume you know someone's worth based on their appearance. And most importantly, treat everyone with respect. Because you never know who you're really talking to. Bruce turned off the lights and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make a difference. But tonight, he was just a man who'd made it home to his family, and that was enough. The jet that Morrison had dismissed him from boarding. It would take Bruce to dozens of countries over the coming months. To film locations, to premieres, to martial arts demonstrations. But it would never be about the jet, it would always be about the journey. About the people he met, the lives he touched, the barriers he broke down. And somewhere in Hong Kong, Richard Morrison would probably never make that mistake again. So tell me, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from judging someone too quickly?